Hi there. Am I can't.
Say it looked like it was, I thought it was just going to be the two of us tonight, but it looks like Dorothy's joining us too.
So you and me, and then Dorothy can take the minutes.
Yeah.
We've got the agenda. What else do we need?
Well, let's just start and see if we can wrap it up for the next 3 minutes.
Oh, that sounds good. Hi, Betsy.
Hello. How are you, Candace?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you and Todd.
Good to see you.
Dorothy. You see my picture anyway.
Yes. You see my moving picture, so it's the same thing. It's just,
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. Sort of camera shy, if you will. Well, internet's not all that awesome here either, so let's not challenge it with video. So you're home, Todd.
yes, I'm home.
That's good.
Yeah. It was largely uneventful as far as everything went, but disappointing for sure.
Yeah. Heard it was very hot in Portland last weekend.
It
don't know if
was. It was really hot. Yeah.
Like 100 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It started to cool off towards the end, but it was pretty hot.
I can see my ceiling fan is still showing in the corner. I remember somebody on the ops team really objected to seeing that ceiling fan go round and round. So I thought I would
I've
here.
I've got mine going here, so it balances them out.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Well, I moved a little bit, so now it's not visible.
I'm going to keep mine going on just on the assumption it might annoy somebody. So
Way to go, Todd.
if folks are annoyed by ceiling fans, then we're all in trouble. It's good to see Herb. I was just thinking of you the other day, Herb.
Hi, Herb.
For a while.
Hey, Herb.
Well, you're still muted. I think you're still muted, Herb.
I thought I'd check up on you folks.
Good. We need checking up on.
Yeah, we do. No better man for the job, Herb. Come on in.
That's right.
Hey, Dorothy.
Mary, how is your husband doing? He was sick with bronchitis a couple of weeks ago.
He's doing better.
Good.
Yeah, he's been on a 2-week course of antibiotics.
Okay.
Seems to have whipped the worst of the bronchitis. So,
Well, that's good.
Hi, everyone.
hi, Nan.
Sorry, I'm running a little behind. I tried to sign in and it said, check your RE@UU Spokane email to get your private code for this meeting. I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't have that.
Weird.
So, everybody.
Good.
Good. Let's see. There's Betsy and Dick and Candace. We've still got
Catherine and Darrell we need.
Yeah.
Catherine and Darrell. Darrell's not coming. Darrell had surgery today.
Oh, he did?
He had eye
Really?
surgery today,
Oh,
I believe.
Oh, I didn't-
Okay.
So just Catherine. We have our quorum though, right? We have 4 of us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Lilia is joining us tonight. I think she might be coming. She might be, wait until it's official in July for her.
Yeah, I spoke with her and she said she was intending to come,
Oh,
but,
she did?
well, that was, during the Pride Parade, so what, 2 weeks ago? But at that time she said, oh, yeah, definitely, but who knows?
Okay. All right.
Who is our 425 number?
I don't know.
We have a person by phone. 42.
Well, Dick Burkhart had said that he wanted to
Oh,
come to some
they're
of our
unmuted.
board meetings.
So this is Steve White. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi,
Oh,
Steve.
hey, Steve.
Oh,
Hi, I'm from Bothell, Washington, and I'm just a remote member. And I was
Oh.
hoping, I thought I'd just snoop, but I was kind of curious about the GA delegate reports.
Oh, all right. Well, that's a little later on our agenda, but you're certainly more than
Yeah.
welcome to join us. So,
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
good to have you joining us for a meeting. I know you stream with us, but it's good to actually have people hear your
Yeah.
voice.
welcome.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Oh, here comes
So
Catherine.
I'll just mute myself unless you need me or whatever.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order because I think all the board members that are coming tonight are able to come are here. So we'll call this June 29th meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Any additions or changes to the agenda that anybody noted? Okay. Let's keep going then. Opening words. Reverend Todd.
Okay, so these are some words I'm going to read it there. It's a little longer than usual for opening words, but you guys have worked so hard these past couple of years that I was hoping to set a tone for this year. Rabbit hurried on by the edge of the 100-acre wood, feeling more important every minute, and soon he came to the tree where Christopher Robin lived. He knocked at the door and he called out once or twice, and then he walked back a little way and put his paw up to keep the sun out and called to the top of the tree. And then he turned all around and shouted, "Hello!" And I say, "It's Rabbit," but nothing happened. Then he stopped and listened, and everything stopped and listened with him. And the forest was very lone and still and peaceful in the sunshine until suddenly, 100 miles above him, a lark began to sing. "Father," said Rabbit, "he's gone out." He went back to the green front door just to make sure, and as he was turning away, feeling that his morning had got all spoilt, when he saw a piece of paper on the ground, and there was a pen in it, as if it had fallen off the door. "Ha," said Rabbit, feeling quite happy again, "another notice." This is what it said: "Gone out. Baxon, busy Baxon. C.R." Rabbit didn't know what a Baxon was, in spite of the fact that he is one. So he went to ask Owl. Owl didn't know either. But we think we know, and we think a lot of other people do too. Cheng Zhu described one quite accurately. There was a man who disliked seeing his footprints and his shadow. He decided to escape from them and began to run. But as they ran along, more footprints appeared, while his shadow easily kept up with him. Thinking he was going too slowly, he ran faster and faster without stopping until he finally collapsed from exhaustion and died. If he had stood still, there would have been no footprints. If he had rested in the shade, his shadow would have disappeared.
Very nice. Thank you, Todd. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is for us to amend or approve as written the minutes from the May 25th board meeting. So thoughts on that, anybody?
Amendments.
I just have one sentence that I think could actually just be removed. Probably just because I know that it feels a little bit maybe just incomplete, and it'd be too much to clarify it. So it might just work just to take out the sentence that says the intention of policy governance is to give control to the staff. Anybody have trouble with just removing that?
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good plan, Lynn.
I think that's like
Yeah,
wide of the
that's not-
mark.
Oh, I think, Tom, you're muted. Are you?
Yeah, just for clarification, we've discussed this before. When you make a removal or a correction or a change, you go back, you don't make note of it in this meeting, but you go back and change the minutes, from that specific meeting.
Yep, these are just our draft minutes.
Okay,
And that was the only thing I had. Anybody else? Okay. And then other than that, so we can vote to approve with that amendment by consensus.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, the next thing on the, the annual meeting minutes. I circulated those to the board members. And I think to Todd and to Dorothy. Well, Dorothy gave them to me. So last year, I think for the last couple of years, we've had a couple of reviewers of those to at least get them prepared to then send to Rebecca to keep for a year until our next annual meeting. Do I have anybody on the board who'd be willing to look at those minutes?
So I could do that. Do we have I mean, I was there, but it would be nice to view a recording. Has it been recorded? Do we
Yeah.
have a recording of it? Okay.
Yeah, that's how Dorothy.
if you can-
does the minutes.
Okay. And yeah, if I could get the link to the recording, I'd be happy. So, and I think there are usually a couple of people.
Yeah. Anybody else able to do that? The recording, I think, is on the website. It's on our website. I think I've seen it already. No other takers? I think I'll do, so Dick, and if you'll do that and I can do that,
Sure.
that'll be two of us, unless there's a congregant who wants to do it. It doesn't have to be a board member.
That's right. It can be in the past, like last year, I did it, and then
Yeah, I think we had a couple of members.
a couple of congregants, right?
Nope. Any takers? All right, Dick, you and I.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a very brief president's report today. I'm going to talk a little bit more later when it comes to GA report and the delegates report. But this is my last meeting as president of the Board of Trustees. And so I really just want to say thank you again, certainly to my fellow board members for a very, very busy year and some very highly committed people to work with, which has been incredibly lovely. I'd like to say thank you to Todd for his leadership and for his friendship and for his guidance in our meetings and through all of this. ups and downs and hard times and good times. And then there are 4 people I very much want to thank as helpers to our board. And I sent each one of those people a letter in the mail, which is helping me practice my handwriting skills. And I thought it was the very least we could do. We'd like to send you each a check for $1 million, but we're trying to pay for our roof. So we aren't going to do that. But those 4 people are Tom Mosier, whose help with us this last year and 2 years, if not more than that, has just been absolutely instrumental. And so we hope you'll stick around and hang out with us as we continue to move forward. Dorothy Mail, we just couldn't do it without Dorothy's work. And the minutes are such an important part of our work here. And it's such a hard job and oftentimes a thankless job. So we want to thank you deeply, Dorothy, for your contributions. Thank you very much. Gordon Diddens, who's not here with us this evening, who served as our moderator for our annual meeting, our special congregational meeting and our annual meeting last year. So he's been our moderator for at least a few of our meetings together. And we may invite him back. He was ill for our annual meeting this year and we missed him deeply. So we sent a letter to Gordon also. And then the last person who's also not with us tonight is Rebecca Adams, whose work in the office and primarily answering my phone calls and my emails and my questions and really just keeping us on track and saying, this is what we need. This is what you need to do. This is how it works, and keeping us all going and moving forward. So those are the 4 people outside of the board that we really wanted to make sure we're very highly recognized and appreciated this evening. So thanks to all of you.
And thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
It's been a fun year, guys.
Yes.
I've learned a lot. All right. So I think that's it for me for my president's report. So I will pass the baton to Todd for the minister's report.
Okay, well, I will begin by dittoing all of those thank yous and adding a thank you to you, Lynn. It's been so good working with you over this past year, as it has been with the entire board. But your leadership has been much appreciated and exemplary, and you've had to deal with a lot of hard work and sometimes some difficult conflicts. And you always did it with poise and grace and kindness and honesty and all the things one needs to be in those kind of that kind of an environment. So thank you so much for a great year, and I'm glad you're not leaving the board, and we'll get to continue this work for a bit more.
Great.
And I would let me bring this a little closer so that you can hear me well. I've got about 3 things. One, I've been obviously gone for a couple of weeks, attending different conferences. The first was a conference in Denver called the Heterodox Academy Conference, and this was something that was begun by Jonathan Haidt, who is an author of lots of books. He's a social psychologist, some real bestsellers, The Righteous Mind and The Coddling of the American Mind, which is a real influence on me. And John McWhorter was one of the guest speakers at this event. So there were about 500 of their members at this conference. It was at a hotel, and they have they've grown to about 5,000 members. If there were, two non-academics present, I was one of them. I may have been the only one. I didn't bump into any others. But it was a very healing environment for me, largely because there were so many people who I mean, these were people that truly were heterodox in their thinking, right? In the sense that you had conservatives and you had liberals and lots of people in between, and they were all just fine with getting together and talking about their concerns over what's happening to liberalism across the Western Hemisphere, particularly in our country, particularly in academia. And so it felt very good to me to be there and know that there are so many people that share the concerns and the perspective I have on how disastrous this is in our country and in our world right now. Then I went to the General Assembly, not to attend the General Assembly since I consider myself banned until I'm invited back, but to demonstrate. And I was disappointed. We had about 15 people that showed up for the demonstration, some from far away and some from close by, but it wasn't a large number, and that was disappointing to me. It would have been nice to have a few more people there to show how concerned we are about things. But we had lots of good conversations. There were some people that really snubbed their noses at us as they walked by and were, rather rude, but nobody angry, nobody attacked us. There were lots of people that didn't want anything to do with us who said, no, thank you, but you have a good day, what you would expect from Unitarians, which I appreciated. And there were some people that stopped and talked to us, and they really were not argumentative. They were curious about why we're there. They were sympathetic. They understood the concerns. Some people seemed very awakened to talk with us. So it was good in that respect. I was most disappointed, and you'll hear more from the delegates report later, but I think I was mostly disappointed to know that I think they had twice as many delegates online as they did in person, which meant it wasn't necessarily the diehards that love to treat the GA as a vacation every year and have the money to do so. The real supporters, if you will, the real true believers. But the UUA really got it, about roughly 95% support on everything for its candidates, for its amendments. And I left feeling, somewhat like I felt the day after Trump was elected, like who are these voters? I feel about most of those voters the way I felt about Donald Trump's voters, shortly after his election. And it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't bode well for Unitarian Universalism. I don't know what it means for me. I'm still processing it. You'll probably still hear me complain a lot, but I don't think I'm going to actively push back. I don't think it's doing any good. I've been at it for 3 years, and I didn't see any progress this year. So this was kind of a pivotal year for me. So I don't know what it means for our church. I don't know what it means for other congregations around the country. What I do believe it means is that liberal religion has died in our country. We only really had one liberal religion that was rooted in freedom, reason, and tolerance, and it's not rooted in that anymore. And it doesn't look like most who wear the label UU give a damn about that. So I'll have to see what emerges. If other people have creative ideas or creative actions to help us guide us in the next steps, but I'm not feeling real good about where we are at after this year's General Assembly. So maybe we'll get deeper insight later when we hear more from some of our delegates. The final thing that I want to bring up today is that I would like to, as the chief administrator of the church, give our administrative staff a raise. It's not something that we have done for any of our administrative staff, which are Rebecca, obviously our operations manager, our communications manager, Michelle, and our bookkeeper, Lynn. Outside of the cost of living expenses, they've not received raises since they've been here, and are really underpaid for the positions that they have, and I think for the work they do. With the fact that inflation is rising at just over 7%, 3% just is not just. And so, and I would also say that, you know, without saying who, one of those employees in particular asked me, you know, for a raise. And I really feel an ethical obligation to do so if possible. So I worked with Rebecca to look at the numbers and see if it is actually feasible with, you know, with this year's budget for us to do something like that. And then if it's sustainable. And it really looks like it is. I'm going to open up my notes here because I have to base them on the sort of research that Rebecca's given me. But you know, for example, Michelle, our communications assistant, is currently paid $18 an hour. The COLA brought it up to $18.57. We'd like to bring that up to $20 an hour for her. For our bookkeeper, Lynn, you know, if we were to hire an independent contractor, the numbers show it'd be about $35 an hour. Where with her COLA increase, it brings it up to $23.19. I want to adjust that to 25. And then, of course, with Rebecca, who I would say is really the right and left hand of the church at this point. She is not only is she great at what she does, but she's so unusually self-motivated and competent, and takes things on that I wouldn't even think to instruct her to take on. She just looks at what needs to happen and she starts making it happen. So we would be lost without her. According to, you know, the recommendations from the UUA, we would be paying somebody at a church our size in her position about 67, just almost 68,000 a year. We're paying her with the COLA increases 52, just over 52,000. And I want to adjust that to $28 an hour. Currently, that would be, it's $25.16 an hour. And that ends up, the total amount with taxes is really about a $7,910 increase. So roughly $8,000 for this plan. So how would we pay for this? We've been looking at using our surplus to set up a budgetary shortfall reserve of 25,000 in it and fund the capital repair and replacement for another 10,000. And at this point, we're really looking at a surplus of about $47,400, which would be more than enough to cover both the reserve funds and the wage increases. Yeah, so I think that's probably it. And then I really asked about sustainability, and you know, Rebecca thinks that this is going to be a sustainable number. We're pretty conservative in our you know, when we make our initial budget recommendations, and so we always plan to spend a lot more than we do, which so far has allowed us to end up with you know, with a bigger spread at the end than we thought than we budgeted for, because we don't usually spend as much as we think we will. We tend to plan for the worst, if you will. So we do have the money in there. It looks like we have it. It's not going to ask, you know, we're not going to have to go outside of the budget that's been approved by the congregation as far as the total amount goes. So I would just like us to shift these funds, $8,000 worth of these funds, to give these 3 employees a bit of an increase, especially given the again, the rising cost due to inflation, the fact that we haven't given them a raise since any of them have been here, and because they deserve it. and at least one of them asked for it. And I think it's really important for us to try to maintain good morale if we can. And I think we can. So I don't think, maybe I'm wrong about this. I've tried to contemplate who makes this decision. I think it's an administrative decision, not a board decision. If you disagree with me, that's okay. but I don't want to make it, I don't want to necessarily ask you to approve it in a formal vote unless you think you need to. But I do want your blessing, your discussion, whatever your, any concerns. I just want to know that the board would be behind this before moving forward with it.
Well, if we don't need a motion, we won't ask for one. But discussion, board members, any discussion there? I mean, I guess I'll start. I think certainly people are absolutely deserving. And thank you for the numbers, Todd, and the research, or probably I should thank Rebecca if she brought that to you. That's very helpful to think that we could do it. That with relative ease and without having to change anything in our budget that we just approved. So those are my thoughts. Others?
I'm very much in favor of it. My vote is yes, even if it's not a vote.
I am too. Sorry if I cut somebody off.
Go ahead.
I'm in favor of giving these employees a raise too. You're right, Todd. It's good for us to talk about it, but it's technically not our decision. But thank you for bringing it to us. Just a couple of questions. You said it's a total of 8,000 for the three of them to get these raises, right?
Yes.
And what are we, and the overall budget is the same. So where are we taking it from exactly?
Well, we're taking it from the surplus, the expected surplus,
Oh, okay. Okay.
which we were, still going to use most of it for the repair and replacement or capital reserve plan. And for any budgetary shortfall that we might have. But we're looking at about, an estimated 47,000. So we're really looking at taking about 8,000 out of that.
Right. That's great. I endorse this plan. Wonderful.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking in the context of just recently, we approved a budget. And that was by congregational vote. And I actually think that that's the appropriate place where something like this should actually take place. And having said that, I'm fully supportive of giving raises to the.
You're right, Richard. And I want to address that because this wasn't something that really came to my attention. Now you will recall that I did raise it during our initial conversations about our initial budget summits and whatnot. Concerned enough even to where I offered to reduce my own salary so that we could at least fairly compensate one of these employees or more fairly compensate them. But it didn't work out in those budget summits. And then when this other employee came to me and asked, and I thought, well, let's see if it can be done. What I will say is that we often operationally and administratively we shift numbers in the budget that's been approved, so long as we're not exceeding the amount that has been the balanced amount that has been approved by the congregation. We have to do that because there's a lot of unexpected things that come up during the year, and some things cost more than we thought, some things cost less.
Sure.
And, there's unexpected things. This would be one of those, but absolutely this, I wish we could have thought of this during the budgeting process itself.
So my suggestion would be that rather than designating it a raise, such that it's built in, because I think that a raise should be something that is approved by the congregation, that we find some other mechanism to provide this compensation to them for this year, and then build it into the budget that we present to the congregation next year.
What kind of a mechanism?
Like a
I'm not
bonus.
sure.
Like a bonus, in other words.
A bonus, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Tom, I see you waving.
Yeah, actually, we need to bounce back to the new bylaws. Article 3, Section 5. In the course of the fiscal year, after the members have adopted a budget for the fiscal year at the annual meeting, the operations team, with the concurrence of the senior minister and the advice of the treasurer and the finance team, shall have complete authority to manage the budget, making such adjustments as needed to reflect unanticipated income or expenses. So if there's any guidance at all in our documents, it would appear to be there.
Yeah, I'm still sort of weighing Dick's argument myself, and I appreciate that, Tom. I don't know that the congregation has been involved in most of the raises we've given over the years, outside of, having, if we had preliminary figures in a budget that was approved, we could say they approved the raises there, but most of that wouldn't be expressed as a raise. It would just be expressed as a final amount. So let me think about that one.
I have a question about the reserve fund itself. I think this is a great idea to give raises, but the reserve fund itself, didn't it come from a reconstituting of some of the PPP funds we got? So my question is just basically, if that's where it came from, I'm wondering about the sustainability, over next year and the years beyond.
Yeah. Well, some of it came from that, but some of it will come from other savings. Usually, as I said, that usually occur through savings and expenses and revenue that additional revenue more revenue than we might have been expecting. So, we're not talking about 47,000 in raises. We're talking about 8,000. So that's where we think it'll be sustainable because of the relatively small amount.
Okay.
So should we, well, I'm not sure what the next step is. If it's not necessarily, if we look at our bylaws and this is an operations team and a chief executive decision ultimately.
I think I mainly wanted to make sure that we're on the same page. I don't want to do anything that creates hostility between myself and the board. I want to be upfront, and I also want your wisdom and your advice. Right. So it seems like we're all mostly on the same page.
I think we are 100% on the same page.
Yeah.
I think Dick's point is well taken, and he also did say he agrees with the raises. So
yeah. Well, I'm going to put my mind to that one. I'll just make the final decision if we want to call it a raise this year. I may actually talk with Rebecca. She has good horse sense about this stuff, and see if there's any issues with that. If the staff would have any issues with a bonus this year that we would convert to a raise next year. And if that, how that affects, if it affects, terminology around benefits and those sort of things that go with that increase. If it doesn't impact it, if it's a difference, it makes no difference. It seems wise to go that route. So I will take that into advice. And if there's no problems with it, we'll do it that way. If not, we'll just make it a straight raise. So thank you all. Thank you. The board and everybody else has given input.
great. Okay. Thanks, Todd. That was your 3 things, right?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is Candace with our operations team report.
Okay, we have 4 items. The team welcomed 3 new members to the ops team: Robert Janishian, Julianne Morse, and Don Willingham. Donna Borden and Jean Larson were thanked for their participation over the past several years. The end of the fiscal year financial reports will be available towards the end of July. Actual numbers are usually complete by August. The religious education children have raised $2,800 to date for the new playground equipment.
Way to go.
Hey,
Great. Isn't that great? An accessible path down to the playground will need to be installed as well. And Rebecca and Stephanie Gronholtz are working to getting quotes for this path install. And lastly, clarification of the attendance report. For in-person attendance, we are counting the number of people present in the building, not just those coming to see the service. This includes people in the sanctuary, also chapel, though I didn't write it in the report, Friendship Hall, kitchen, and foyer. Children in the RE wing are counted separately by the RE staff, and that number is submitted to the office. The number of devices logged in to stream each service is recorded and likely does not reflect the actual number of people watching, as often more than one person is watching from a single device. The guest speaker team reminds all guest speakers that we have people streaming each service. And from the totals gathered over the past year, the number of devices logged in is often similar and sometimes exceeds the number of people physically present in the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Any questions from anybody, comments? Cheers for the RE kids.
Yeah.
So that, I do have one question about that. If you know, I'm not sure if you do know, are they going to repair that or tear the current one down and replace it, or?
I think that I wasn't there. I got the minutes, so I wasn't there for the discussion last month, and Todd, you can correct me, but I think they're going to tear it down and put a brand new structure in.
That's correct. Yeah, they're going to replace it. And it's something the kids will choose. The kids have raised the money and came up with the idea, and they get to choose the kind of playground they want within reason.
Within reason.
We're not really going to have a Ferris wheel because we couldn't afford one, but
That was his opportunity. That's right. He missed it. Max missed his opportunity to ask for the Ferris wheel. That was so funny. Great. Well, maybe they can even help contribute some labor to building it, and that'll really be some good Unitarians.
Yeah.
That they're raising.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, and the generosity of our congregation to raise that kind of money over cookies in 3 weeks. I mean, thank you all and the entire congregation for that show of love and support. I just think it's really special. There, when I first came here, and it lasted really through our last RE director, there was just this weird myth that we didn't like children and that we weren't supportive of families. And I said, I can't believe it. We built an entire religious education wing in the same building. Most churches don't, the religious education wing is somewhere else on the campus, right? This is like 20 feet away from the worship service. Kids are in our worship service. A third of our budget or more went to RE at that time. And I just think that this church has shown tremendous love and affection for our kids and for our families. And this to me is just one more huge example of that. So we need to celebrate, the installation of the new playground with an ice cream social or something to make everybody.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun to watch that bake sale going on, and that jar of money like filled up so fast. I was like, wow. We need to ask for a jar that size with a roof sign on it, but we
Right. Yeah.
about the playground instead.
That is a bake sale there.
Well, I wanted to say too, Todd, since you've been here, you have from the pulpit and just by your example interacting with families and children, I think you helped improve our culture toward being more accepting and supportive of our families and children. So,
Well, I just needed an excuse to bring my puppets out. You know, that's.
yeah.
They're very
Thank you,
helpful. in
Candace.
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Okay, if no further questions for Candace, then the next thing, oh, we do need to just be official so that it's in the minutes that the board is approving, I guess, or appointing these new operations team members. I believe they actually officially start next month.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they were there at this last.
Right.
We had a crossover meeting.
Yeah, crossover meeting. So, Dorothy, if we could just have that in the minutes, that the board has approved Robert Janishi and Julianne Morse and Don Willingham as new members of the operations team. So that's great. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is a report from our endowment team from Karen and Mary Giannini.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Well, where we left off last was earlier this spring. We had a brief snag in our conversations with the Seattle Foundation. The staff member that we'd been working with, her name was Jen. She left the foundation abruptly, and we'd always been assuming that they understood that we wanted a quasi endowment with kind of the same terms that we had had with the UUCEF, which included that we would set an annual withdrawal amount, that we could do quarterly distributions, and that we would have a fund exit possibility. But Jen's supervisor, Allison Parker, took over, and the provision, the draft agreement she sent us was completely different. It was for a strict endowment, kind of similar to the Innovia Foundation document or agreement that we rejected, where in this case, the Seattle Foundation would own our funds and we'd have basically no distributions for 2 years. We'd have to draw down our current endowment amount before the endowment would kick in. And we told Ms. Parker that we wanted a more flexible agreement, which we thought we'd started with originally, and so that we could invest our funds this year and start getting quarterly distributions starting this fall. And they clearly wanted us and our money and our participation. And so they preserved a reserve fund agreement for us. And that reserve fund includes several investment options, including a very low cost index fund, which we're interested in, and also our opportunity to review the investments every 6 months, and an opt-out clause. So we have sent that proposed agreement to the attorney that we hired, Bill Etter. Mary's been working with him, and he's reviewed it and amended it in the document that you have tonight. And Mary Giannini will explain the 2 documents that we've given you, and then the next steps that we're proposing. So we're getting close, but a few more steps.
Okay. As Karen said, in a nutshell, what seemed to have happened was that there was miscommunication that led Seattle Foundation to think we were asking for something completely different than we were asking for. The new agreement that we got that was distributed to you for review tonight is what we originally asked for. Essentially, it's instead of a traditional endowment, which for a community foundation, that's a very typical thing to do, because usually they're set up to take money from families and corporations and sometimes nonprofits as contributions. They become part of the foundation's property, and they're managed for the purposes of making distributions to the families or corporations or nonprofits that make those deposits. As Bill Etter pointed out to me, most community foundations don't have an option like the Seattle Foundation is offering us. Essentially, what they're offering us is what they call a reserve fund, which is really more like a management vehicle than it is like an endowment. for them, essentially, they're agreeing that they'll take our money, they'll put it in their investment vehicles, they'll charge an administrative fee for the Seattle Foundation's investment advisors to manage that money for us. And then they'll make quarterly distributions to us, very much like the UUCEF did. That was effectively the kind of relationship we had with UUCEF. So the agreement sets up that reserve fund. It sets up a quarterly distribution schedule. The schedule is set forth, I think, for 18 months. Is that right, Karen?
Yes.
First agreement.
Mhm.
And then they'll extend it beyond that after the first 18 months. And then because the agreement, even though we talked about it with the foundation, the agreement itself didn't provide the termination provision that we had asked for that would permit us with notice to take our money back out again. And Bill Etter added a provision that says that upon no more than 6 months' notice, the Seattle Foundation will return the endowment, the reserve account funds in their entirety to the church. So we hope that this covers all the issues that we were concerned about. As Karen said, we do have the option of choosing among 3 funds. The entire team is most interested at this point in the index fund, which is the cheapest fund in terms of administration fees. And we do have the option to change funds as we go forward. I think, Karen, we kind of agreed that the returns for the investment, the index fund, were quite good in comparison to the other 2 accounts, which were more expensive to manage. So with your approval, we'll forward the agreement as Bill amended it to the foundation for their review and hopefully approval. The second document that you have is essentially the same thing that the Board of Trustees did in April at the request of the Seattle Foundation, and that is a resolution by the Board of Trustees authorizing the corporate entity, the church, to transfer funds to the Seattle Foundation for the purposes of setting up an investment vehicle. The one you reviewed and signed, or Lynn signed on behalf of the board in April, was to set up the traditional endowment. And, we just kind of signed it because that's what they sent us, but obviously that wasn't what we want. So we've been asked to do a second resolution that authorizes the establishment of a reserve account, a reserve fund, under essentially the same terms, with a distribution process and an investment vehicle and a binding resolution going forward. And so the document that I sent Lynn, again, for the board's review and approval and for her signature, is the updated resolution because they asked us to, I put in language that says this new resolution replaces and supersedes the first resolution that the board signed back in April. So that there's no question in anybody's mind that even though we initially approved a traditional endowment account, we're now changing that to this newer vehicle, the reserve fund. So does anybody have any questions? That's kind of a probably longer explanation than you wanted, but whatever.
I thought it was very helpful. And I did have, well, I had concerns actually when I first read through it because it was just a change in some language that we're just so used to because we have an endowment team and it says so clearly on this document, this is not an endowment.
Exactly.
So I said, ooh, yikes. What will do we have to change things like that to call it a reserve fund team now or I mean, that seems sort of just semantics kind of stuff. But there was just language in there that just seemed a little bit, I mean, I love the explanation because super helpful for me, and I have zero experience in this. And it's very difficult to understand it unless you're in it all the time.
Yeah.
So that was super helpful. I do want to see if anybody else has any questions, but the endowment terminology is just something I know that everybody in our church is just so used to. And so will we be able to continue to use that language, or what will we do about that?
I believe so. I asked Bill Etter what he thought about that. And he says, for our purposes, we can call our money, whatever we want. It's, for us, it is an endowment from the congregation members and friends who submit money, make contributions to the church for the purposes of a long-term support vehicle. It's an endowment. If you look at the definition of a traditional endowment for a community foundation, probably the functional issue for a community foundation is that whatever the money is, it's called an endowment because it becomes the property of the community foundation. And that's almost completely a tax issue for the people and corporations who contribute money to community foundations. The main reason they do it, as opposed to contributing money to a 501c3 organization, is that most 501c3 organizations don't allow for any ongoing mechanism for the people who give the money to have something to say about how it's used. Community foundations are set up almost specifically for the purpose of letting people who make those donations to them then tell the foundation what to do with them. It's, in a way, it's kind of a tricky little mechanism for allowing people who, they want to give money, they want a tax break for it, but they want to have something to say about how it's used. And so those community foundations originally were basically set up to make that possible. And so, for example, a lot of corporations give money to the Seattle Foundation or to Innovia. And they basically have an agreement with the organization, with the foundation, to be able to direct the way the money is spent. And as you recall, that was part of one of the problems that the Innovia Foundation had in the past, was they got money from people who had perhaps not quite open-minded views on how the money should be spent. And so those people, by using this vehicle, were still able to have something to say about how the money got spent, even though they got a tax deduction for it. I mean, that's essentially why those community foundation vehicles are set up the way they are. The Seattle Foundation, Bill pointed out that it's unusual for a community foundation to have a process like they're letting us use, a reserve fund process, which really means that they don't own the money that we put in there, they just manage it for us. And that's effectively what the UUCEF was doing too. They took our money. It didn't belong to them, but they had the discretion to invest it and manage it. And I think the concern that we were seeing over time was that the UUCEF might have been moving a little bit more closely to the concept of a community foundation in the way that it was using the money. But that's neither here nor there. That's a separate issue.
So the statement in here that says that the foundation shall have the ultimate authority and control over all property in the fund and the income derived from it, that's talking about the management of the fund. Is that correct? Yes. Or
yeah, that's by virtue of the management. Essentially, our agreement with them is our agreement to let them manage the funds.
I see.
And to have discretion over how they're managed and invested. And in return, they give us distributions that we can use as we see fit.
I see.
That's essentially the deal. It's a contract relationship. And it's unlike the typical community foundation relationship in that they don't own the money, they just manage it. For public relations purposes, one of the other issues that we did ask Bill about had to do with whether we have to comply with their solicitation provisions, which essentially say, you know, if you solicit money for your endowment that you then transfer to us for management, you know, you have to follow our rules about mentioning our name and mentioning our processes and all of that. And our question to Bill was, could we, in terms of if we're only soliciting from our congregational members and for our traditional process of asking for contributions to the endowment for the uses that we've talked about, do we have to follow those rules? And he said, there's nothing that says you really do. There's nothing that says you really don't. But his guess is that if our solicitation process takes place entirely within our church with our congregation members, and if we get money from the outside just because someone likes us and we didn't ask for it, we don't have any obligations in terms of following the foundation's rules. Now, if we were going to go outside and do an active solicitation for money for our endowment, no doubt they'd expect us to at least tell the world that they manage the money. And you know, and that they have a mission and value and purpose that's established by their own corporate bylaws and articles of incorporation, and that what we do with our money to some extent has to reflect what they do with theirs, because they're managing it for us. But Karen, I feel fairly comfortable with Bill's representation that he thinks it probably wouldn't be an issue if we do what we do now, which is essentially talk to our members and ask for money for the endowment, but we don't go out and actively solicit from anybody else.
Right.
Well, that's very helpful. When I read that section 7 that addresses the solicitation, I thought, oh, you know, will the endowment team have to request permission, you know, every year before? Because I know the Requiem service, usually there's a formal presentation and, you know, requests that people consider donating.
Right. I'm moving my computer because Art came in and he's going to watch TV while I'm in the meeting. So sorry. I'm changing.
So if there was a strange situation where we did find ourselves out soliciting for it, at least it sounds like we're joining an organization, we wouldn't mind having to throw that bit of information in, right?
I'm not
No,
sure.
I mean, they have, the Seattle Foundation, you know, gives to lots of progressive causes, you know, primarily in King County, but they're amending our agreement to say in other parts of Washington State. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And we don't.
And yeah, and just to go back 6 months or 8 months, 10 months at this point, when we first started this, you know, we also interviewed several just strict investment firms through Schwab and some very good companies, but we did not want to be in the position of managing this ourselves. We wanted an arm's length professional management system in place. And so now we've gone through the universe of all the possibilities. And this is the one that seems to us to best meet the needs of our church.
I think it's useful also to recall that we have like 2 layers of kind of like principles that we're adhering to. And the first one is in our own bylaws. And in the very first point, we spell out what the purpose of setting this fund up is, which is to, you know, set up a mechanism that provides annual sustainable contributions to the general operating fund in perpetuity. That's it. So that's what we do with the money that we receive. And then we're contracting with the Seattle Foundation. Beneath that, you know, as long as everything that they do allows us to remain true to what the congregation has approved in the bylaws, I think we're in the clear.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you guys for your great work on this. I know it is been a lot of research, and you've acted very responsibly and diligently on behalf of the entire congregation. So thank you so much for coming up with what looks like the absolute best option we could make at this point, or have at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Mary, I only received the one document from Karen. Did you send me something today?
I sent both you and Karen a copy of the resolution. It was in Pages, which is the Apple word processing system, and it may not be very openable. And if it's not, I can convert it to a Word document by messing with it. But so did you get an email from me today with an attachment? Because that would be what it is. The resolution.
Oh, here it is right here. Okay, let me see if I can open it.
Yeah, see if you can open it.
So while Lynn is doing that, Karen, you mentioned that they changed, and I saw the cross out where they put King County kind of exclusively at the beginning of that agreement, but there's still King County sprinkled all throughout that document. Is there any chance of, I know it's somewhat, doesn't matter, but changing that everywhere it says King County to be a little more inclusive of our side of the state?
Yeah, sure. We could have them, they change it in the lead sentence, but we could have them change it in other sentences also.
Right.
Yeah,
And
they
so
started with
okay.
their standard form. And
Sure. Well, words matter. They do matter. We are
They-
over here.
right.
So, and the other thing was, so Mary, you said that an index fund seemed to be the most interesting to you guys on the endowment team when we actually get our money over there and get it invested. Is that an index fund that the Seattle Foundation has devised? I guess it's their index fund. Is that right? Or
Karen?
Yes, it's managed by them. I just second get the.
It's Seattle Foundations in the sense that their investment advisors put it together the way typically investment advisors would put together.
So we're different.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have three choices for us: an index pool, a socially responsible investment pool, and the balance pool. And they charge a 1% management fee, the foundation, but the index pool is the lowest cost. Above that, it's like 0.07% per year to manage. And we thought that would be a good place to start.
Right. Sounds good.
And we also have the option of changing our investment decisions every 6 months if we want to.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right.
Looks like Tom
Thank
has
you.
a question.
Yeah, since I'm a Fidelity investor, I know that there are, Fidelity probably has 50 or 60 index funds. It depends on what the orientation is. How would you describe this index fund, unless I missed part of the conversation? An income fund, a growth and income fund? How would you describe it in terms that are usually used by the finance houses?
Well, it's described in their literature as a 10+ year giving horizon. It invests in domestic equity, international equity, some fixed income, and cash and equivalents. And it has last year was a fantastic year. It returned 20.2%. And of course, this year, everything's a bit in the negative territories. It's 3-year average, not this year, but before that was 10%. We have all these figures, and we've analyzed them all. There's also a balance pool, which was about it earned about 22%, but its management fee is quite a bit higher. It's about 1% higher. If you want any of that information, Tom, I can send it to you. I have all the, we have all the various options, and we've gone through them as a team.
Well, I trust you all, but I was curious about
Yeah.
how they would describe that fund or what its performance was.
Yeah, it has a lot of Vanguard index funds in it.
Okay, so it's a fund that's a collection, substantially a collection of index funds.
That's correct. It's a fund of funds.
Okay, all right. And Vanguard is excellent in that arena.
Hey, can I ask another question? And this isn't, I trust you guys too in all of your analysis, but I heard, Mary, you said something interesting about Innovia that I didn't hear 10 months ago when we were deciding on all of the institutions, Karen, that you were talking about where we could put our money. And we went away from Innovia, I thought, because they didn't have an opt-out option. They wouldn't let us take our money out quickly. That was mainly it. But and I'm definitely not rehashing this decision, just curious about what you said about Innovia and community funds and people that invest in them or give to them as a tax shelter essentially, and then ask for their money to be used in ways that we wouldn't be aligned with, was I thought what you said, Mary, about Innovia.
That is effectively what I said, and that was based on a number of comments that came from members of the congregation, and also at one point from Innovia about some monies that they were managing and distributing that the donors had requested be used for, I can't remember if it was, white nationalists, white supremacist
my goodness.
causes.
Yeah, it was white supremacist. It was white supremacist groups.
Yeah.
They got into a big flap over that and got lots of criticism which is hardly a UU value. So that also raised big red flags for us.
Oh, I think I remember when that was in the paper a little while back.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
That's several years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you both for all you're doing on that. It is a lot of research and staying on it. So yeah, thank you.
Well, we hope we're close to done, right?
What we need is the board, the resolution that Lynn is looking at to be approved. And then if that's approved, then we can move ahead. I think Rebecca, the office is closed next week, the church, the week of July 4th, but then we could potentially, as long as the Seattle Foundation agrees with our edits so far, including like King County Plus, we'll put that in there several times.
Thank you.
Then we could move it as early as the week of July, the next week, after the 4th of July, July 11th, I guess.
So I can open this, Mary, and I can actually edit it because it says at the bottom, Lynn Janician, President, Board of Trustees.
Oh, okay.
And so I just put a D at the end because I don't want to be a bore. And then I probably need to sign this by tomorrow and get this to Rebecca because I won't be president as of July 1st.
Oh, okay.
So this does not look any different. I mean, the wording is similar to the previous, so I can't imagine that anyone would have a problem. It's the same thing. It's just.
Yeah, it's effectively the same thing except a reserve fund instead of an endowment.
Correct. So,
using their term endowment.
Right. So any problems, board members, with me signing that and getting that I'll get it to Rebecca tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Good.
Great.
Any other questions or comments for our endowment team? Huge.
Just thank you for all your hard work.
Huge thank you. Yeah. And we'd still love to have you keep coming until it's in there, guys.
Yes. We
That would
will.
be so great to just
Okay.
have that. Well, I don't get to say I won't be president, but that's what I like is until it's all tucked in its place, it would be so lovely to have that update.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have the board keeping an eye on it as we go forward, just to see how it goes.
Yeah.
This is a new thing for us.
Yeah,
Lynn,
sure.
Lynn, I had to step out of the room for a moment to deal with something with Mary. Now, did you take a formal action to approve this either by vote, or are you declaring as the president with no objection that it's approved?
I didn't
There-
take a
there
formal.
needs- Yeah, there needs to be a formal approval by the board.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I'm after.
okay. So,
Okay. So move in second, I move it.
you're moving it
Yeah, I move that we vote to adopt this.
in a second.
And I second.
Okay, and all in favor? And Betsy too, right?
All right, yeah, yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Tom. See, and now I have to write you another letter. Never gives up on us. Okay, thank you guys very much. We are really pretty close to a little bit ahead of schedule, so good. A little bit of time to discuss our GA experience. Most of us here were delegates for that, and so does anybody want to start by talking about their experience with GA? I'm happy to start. I'll start and feel free to jump in. So I will say this was my first experience as a GA delegate. And so I went into it not fully. I did a little bit of research before GA started. Actually, I did quite a bit of research because it's very much more complicated to understand how they run the show than I ever dreamed of. But we were, all 7 of us were registered just for the business only portion of GA, which means that we did not need to pay for our attendance, although we could give a donation if anybody wanted to. I'm just so stuttery because it was an experience I was not anticipating, and it was, I can't think of descriptive terminology, but it was not what I would consider myself to be when I signed up to become a Unitarian Universalist. It was just, it felt, as Dan described it, Dan Ekrit was one of our delegates, like I was sitting in a revival. So all of us attended virtually, and I was in the Zoom meeting on Friday of GA. Was the day that most of the things that we were wanting to vote on were discussed. The directions for being able to speak or to speak against or for the resolutions, the business resolutions, were put into the chat of the Zoom meeting. And there were literally hundreds of comments in the chat of the Zoom meeting. And so I missed my opportunity to speak. I wanted to speak against the first business resolution, which was the resolution stating for the whole bylaw revision that they are planning on writing. And I had written an exactly 2-minute, I had 2 minutes to speak, but I did not put myself into the con line because I was intentionally ignoring the chat, which was literally just people making comments on nothing. There was nothing useful in that chat. And it was so distracting from what was going on in the meeting, that I couldn't keep up with it or follow it. It was just a very unusual experience. Each speaker introduced themselves. They described what they looked like, what they were wearing. They gave their home church name. They did do a land acknowledgement for whatever indigenous tribes land their home congregation was for, which was not an issue at all. But the description, they would describe themselves. Here's an example. Somebody said, I'm a large white woman wearing a lavender jacket or whatever and blue glasses, and I have gray hair. And then in the chat, somebody said, you're not large, you're just the perfect size. And then immediately there was an onslaught of, large is not an offensive term. She gets to describe herself however she wants to. And it was just comment after comment after comment after comment. And then it was a very strange experience for me. So I don't want to agree with Todd that liberal religion is dead or dying or has died, because I think it would be a tragedy if the UUCS is not the liberal voice of religion in our community. But I don't know what that was. I found it, I must say, with all of my heart, I believe that all of those people with their hearts are acting in what they believe to be in the best interest of themselves and others. I'm hoping that's true. It just was not at all what I recognized as something I would have left my home Lutheran church for and said, oh, I want to be a part of this. So that was my experience. Others?
Well, I have to say, I only voted. I didn't attend any of the sessions by design. I was really taken aback that the resolutions passed with 95% of, the vote. And just last year, their proposal to just put forth one candidate for the presidency was voted down. And so, I don't know, I was just so surprised that it was 95% in favor of those resolutions. Especially since the way they were stated, it was just kind of nebulous. Well, we want to suspend the planning committee because it's preventing us from innovating and trying new things. And it was like, well, why? With a planning committee, why can't they innovate and institute changes? That just didn't make any sense to me. And to me, it's a little scary that the bylaws are now suspended, and so they have no guiding documents that are, the documents that supposedly are to guide the UUA leadership. So anyway, I was just really surprised.
Betsy or Dick?
Yeah, so like Candace, I primarily voted. I did follow some of the chat, and I didn't find it illuminating, as you said. And I also am very concerned with the what it is that they appear to have in mind with regard to the bylaws. I mean, they talk about how it's not, they were written 60 years ago, and this is a new time, and we need to think anew. But thinking anew, if you're not thinking well, is not necessarily a step in the right direction. And so I'm just, I find it troubling, and my own feeling, like Lynn, I agree with Lynn. I do not want to say that liberal religion is dead in America. I think that it's alive and well in the UUCS. And I think that one of the things that we do is we stand tall and we represent a beacon. We show how it is actually done. I think that it may be that, we need to, in the future, if the UUCS or if the UUA reaches out to us and tries to exert influence or something, which just a polite note back that we consider them a service organization as they were originally founded in 1960, and we do not find that this is useful service. Thank you very much. We'll follow up if we see anything that you're offering that would be useful.
I did, my statement that I wanted to when I wrote it to speak against it, did say that I was against it, despite the fact that our own congregation had just gone through the exact same thing, basically revising our own bylaws for very similar reasons. Although what we found was that by looking at our bylaws, that they were pretty rock solid at their core, and that the framers, if you will, of our original bylaws for this religious institution had at some point known, looking into the future, that these values, this document would be written with these values of freedom and reason and tolerance at their core. And at any rate, doesn't matter because I didn't get to say anything. So I did put it in the chat, not in the chat. I put it on a discussion board. There was a discussion board for each resolution and for their amendment. And there were all kinds of topics on the discussion board. One was somebody posted a blog. Actually, it was one of the co-moderators, which floored me. One of the co-moderators posted a blog post written by a guest poster on his personal blog, talking about the gadfly affair, as if this Reverend Cynthia somebody or other from Michigan knew exactly what had happened from the gadfly affair. And so I stewed about that, and I did post something, just a brief comment to say, nice try, but you don't have any idea what you're talking about. I didn't say it quite like that. But Todd is well known. Ann Schneider was there. Ann Schneider had some comments on the discussion board. People were still talking about the gadfly affair. Still talking about Spokane, still talking about Todd. But
Was anybody talking about Todd in a positive way?
well, certainly Ann Schneider. Mostly people were asking questions like, why is this continuing? Why is the Ann Schneider asked several questions, and Cynthia, this Reverend Cynthia from a church in Michigan, I mean, it's hard to evaluate people on a discussion board post it. It's like reading Facebook comments, and they're just rude. They're just, and she was just rude. But yes, people, I mean, we are just clearly divided. People who know what happened and understand Todd's message are trying to say one thing, and it is completely disregarded. Just disregarded.
It's very similar to my experience as a delegate last year. I just felt so alienated. It felt like I don't understand these people. So many of them. It feels like it's a complete takeover of it's a completely different way of viewing Unitarianism. And it was very disheartening last year. And sounds like that's similar to this year.
They're calling it an evolution, and it's really a redefinition. It's truly a redefinition.
Yes.
Can I interject something here just quickly, because I want you to understand what I mean when I say liberal religion is dead in America. Certainly, Unitarian Universal or liberal religion is alive in our congregation, and it's alive in other congregations too. I wouldn't necessarily say, Dick, it's alive and well. In our church, I'd say it's alive in our church, and it's standing its ground for sure. It's standing its ground, but it's been tough. We've had to deal with the same things that is tearing liberal organizations. A wonderful article in the New York Times this morning that listed all sorts of major progressive organizations that are being eaten alive, and said, we don't need the conservatives to take down liberalism. We're doing it ourselves internally. So it's a really interesting article with lots of evidence in there. And that's one of the reasons I think this is happening to Unitarianism largely unseen in the world, because we are such an insignificant religion. We've become such an insignificant religion that, we're small potatoes compared to academia or the ACLU or, some of these other bigger organizations that are more well known. But for me, my definition of religion really is a mindset that is part of a larger collective, right? It's not, Southern Baptist religion is a conglomerate of Southern Baptist churches, not just one church. And so if we end up isolated, which I think we will be, without somebody. And I don't want it to be me, because I'm just not passionate about the idea, but somebody coming along saying, okay, we need an alternative. The UUA has just gone nuts, and we can no longer be part of it. It doesn't serve us well. And it's not serving liberal religion well. If that institution doesn't emerge, then I would say that liberal religion, that's what I mean by liberal religion being dead, that the Unitarian Universalist movement no longer exists. They may call themselves Unitarian Universalists, but they do not have those liberal values that our religion has been rooted in. So that's what I mean by it. The perennial values that manifested themselves as Unitarianism in particular in this country are perennial, and they will return. They may return to the UUA, but I fear that the UUA is leaking numbers so badly because they have a very narrow dogma that doesn't serve well as a religious dogma at all, and that is critical race theory. That's driving people away, and so we're already becoming smaller. And I fear by the time people come to their senses, this religion that was slowly going away to begin with, there'll be nothing left to revive. So that's what I mean by liberal religion being dead in America. It's very likely dead as a movement. Our religion has gone away if you will, nationally, which is the only place it's existed. So, sorry, Tom.
Well, I wanted to ask a question. Anybody can jump in. Was there anything at GA that would suggest that, say, within a 2-year time frame, we are going to, as a congregation, are going to have to make a decision whether to abandon our relationship with UUA and become an independent, for instance, the First Unitarian Society of Spokane, and just be independent, finding our own insurance for our employees, relying on ourselves, not relying on any connection. Did anybody see in a 2-year time frame things coming down to that point?
No.
I see the opposite, Tom. That's the tragedy of it is, last year we had Jay Kisco ran for the board, and he was an alternate candidate. He's someone who's of our mindset, and he got 13% of the vote. And last year there was an amendment defeated that would have changed the bylaw language, giving the board the opportunity to forward only one name as president. They've eliminated all possibilities of having anybody else run, rather than having to put out a minimum of 2. So the delegate said, no, you have to at least pretend to have an election. You still have to put out 2. So that gave me some hope that maybe there is a bridge too far. And so I was kind of looking, is that number going to grow to 20% this year? Is there momentum that what we've been doing to raise awareness for the last 3 years is going to result in, a small protest that can become even a larger protest in next year and a larger protest the year after that? I didn't see any of that. What I saw was just sort of a blank, and I will be insultive to most of the delegates at the General Assembly this year. This sheepish or cultish like devotion to, yes, whatever you say. Oh, you want to rewrite our bylaws. Oh, the focus on Article 2, our 7 principles. Oh, our 7 principles are a mess, you say. Okay, whatever you say, yes, yay, that's scary to me. And I think that's the direction we're heading. I don't think it's going to get better. I don't think the resistance is growing. And so I don't see anybody stepping up to, at this point at least, to start something new so that folks like us can say, well, let's connect with some of these other churches that are of the same mind, few as they might be, so that we still feel like we're connected to something larger than ourselves.
Well, you kind of have answered my question. I'm not thinking that we would be connected to anything else. I'm just saying that we'd become a freestanding Unitarian church without any affiliation with anybody. And does anybody see that happening within a couple of years? Either are deciding we can't take it anymore, or they're saying to hell with you, get out of our organization.
Well, I think we would, I'm speaking as Lynn Janishi and certainly not a board member right now, but I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would kick us out. I would love it if they would, because that would make them look bad.
Well, if the 8th principle gets in there, and there's some kind of accountability, and they rate us, and we get a score of 12 out of 140, and they're going to say either shape up or ship out. Isn't that what accountability is coming down to?
My new understanding about the 8th principle now, based on a discussion board reading, was that there won't be a vote on the 8th principle. That churches are either allowed to adopt that or not. And the UUA is encouraging and celebrating when people do. And they have 200 and some churches or members, fellowships, whatever, who have already adopted the 8th principle.
Okay, all right. Thanks for clarification.
We would not have to do that.
Mhm.
And I'm sure, the pressure will come down, but
Mhm.
I just would hope that we could continue to be who we say we are, and what we've known I mean, it truly is becoming, that was unrecognizable to me. I'm sorry, Karen, go ahead.
I'm wondering, was there any talk at all about the pressure to recovenant churches? You know, the recovenanting where you have to be, what was the term? There was some term about responsibly, you know,
Accountable.
adhering to the
Yeah.
principle. Yeah, accountable, responsible accountability.
The words accountable and covenant were the words of the weekend, the entire week.
Okay.
Covenant, 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 accountable, accountable, accountable. And people did ask, accountable to who? Accountable to each other. We're accountable to each other. A covenant, what is the how we've always been a covenantal relationship. Every religion, every meeting we starts with a covenant, or every team that's formed starts with how are we going to behave with each other. It just went on and on and on. At one point, I mean, I would encourage you all, if you have a moment to, I think you could watch Reverend Frederick Gray's president's report or speech or whatever it was called, but it was she denigrated congregational polity. I felt like she was looking right at me. She talked about being saved. She used the term being saved by this religion. How many of you have been saved by this religion? How many of your children have been saved?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was
Horrifying.
very
Another thing I did notice, a friend of mine in our church sends me the INUUC bulletin every week, and they were giving their own take on what happened, and they kind of took an indirect swipe at Todd. They didn't name him, but they sort of said, yeah, we ran into somebody sort of like he who will not be named. So I was wondering, Todd, did you have any interactions with them or not?
My God. I'm up there with Voldemort now.
You
Wow.
are Voldemort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to say something about the a covenant and accountability, because I think what has happened, and I'm inferring this based on what I've been reading and understanding the direction they're taking. Initially, there was a documented formal movement to formally become a covenantal organization that they wanted to put into the bylaws. We have those records of those meetings and those recommendations, which they wanted to actually put forward the team on recovenanting, as they called it. And by the way, it's called recovenanting because they wanted to require congregations to periodically recovenant. They were recommending every 2 years, and that would have to be done by congregational vote, and they would have to fill out some sort of acceptable report showing how they had been held accountable to that covenant, right? Now, that was the recommendation, and they were calling for it to happen at the General Assembly in 2018. It never manifested. Instead, what we have seen is these past few years, they've been increasingly using the language, ours is a covenantal faith. We are a covenantal religion. We have always been a covenantal religion. I saw a paper written by a Harvard student recently tracing our history back to the Puritans being a covenantal religion, back to Puritanism. It was, of course, pure bullshit, and it passed. It was acceptable at Harvard, this non-historical nonsense. It was written in 2022. Okay, so they're rewriting our history on the highest level. The eighth principle has not done well. The fact that it has been accepted by only, approved by only 200 churches, and that even the true believers are asking, well, what does this word accountable mean? Means problems being accepted as an eighth principle, not only because of the word accountable, but because the thing is twice as long as any other principle in there. It's clearly not a principle, it's a compound statement. So I believe what they are doing is just what they did with covenant. They're going to say, let's just not go through the formal process. We'll just declare this to be true. And we'll say it often enough until everybody believes it. And this word accountable will be something that and they're already, they held me accountable. Tell me what I'm accountable for, or why, but I'm accountable for writing a book that disagrees with this mindset. So I do think that's going to happen, and it's already happening. It's going to be informal. I believe that, you know, the Article 2 Study Commission realized we're not going to get this 8th principle in there, and in fact, at least half of our principles prohibit us from doing what we're doing, particularly the worth and dignity of every person, the free and responsible search for meaning, and, you know, promoting democracy in our congregations and in society at large. Those don't work in an authoritarian regime. Those work in a religion that is founded on with an anti-authoritarian viewpoint, not one that promotes authoritarianism. So, and there's also, I've also now heard of sermons ministers are giving, saying the 7 principles are a mess. Nobody can understand them. Nobody can remember them. We've got to completely get rid of those, rewrite them, and let's focus on our values instead of principles. So this attempt, I mean, if you look at the language of the bylaw rewrite, it specifically says we want to focus on Article 2. Article 2 is the sources and the principles. So this is rewriting our religion into something entirely new, doing something, I don't know what, dramatic to those 7 principles. And I believe it will be something we will be held accountable to, and they will expect churches to either abide by it, or they will kick us out. They've already done an experiment where they've threatened one church that if you continue to use the term Unitarian, Universalist, use those in any combination, if you use a chalice, if you refer to the 7 principles, you are in violation of our copyright rights. They've already done that. And I think they're planning on doing that to churches that say, we're not going to support you anymore. We're not going to give you a dime. They're going to say, okay, you can't be called a Unitarian church anymore. We own that. I think that's the direction they're heading. I don't think they backed off. They're just not going to put it in the bylaws. They're just going to do it. One reason not to have bylaws, right? One reason to say, hey, can we suspend the bylaws for the next 3 years? Anybody got a problem? We're nice people. You can trust us.
There's a lot of that. You have to trust. You have to trust us. You have to trust us.
Actually, you know what, Lynn, in my corporation, something on the daily website said on the employee page, many hundreds of thousands of employees, that this was Trust Month. I'm like, have you heard? Has anybody else heard that? I don't know, some HR initiative, but I don't know. It was
Trust
crazy.
Month.
Seriously, Catherine, I'm serious. So,
Wow.
but
Oh my goodness.
I know it's revolting a little bit. If you have to talk about it, then that's a problem, right? You have to ask for stuff or demand it, you know.
Or ask why you don't. You know, why don't you? How come you don't trust? I'm like, oh, really? I'm
Right.
yes. Why would I? Anyway,
Well, even Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Exactly. By the way, Karen, I like your pronunciation of our fellow Spokane Unitarian Universalist congregation's name. That was
Inyak.
Inyak.
And yeah.
I call him.
Mm.
So back to Tom's question though, to Todd about 2 years. I don't know where you're coming from with 2 years, Tom. Obviously some sort of preparation or looking ahead is what you're thinking about. And the fact that our employees are insured is part of the group, you know, with the UUA. So, and potentially other things that we benefit from, some vestigial service organization stuff, Dick, you know, right, left over. But I guess that's what you're getting after.
Well, I just chose 2 years as arbitrary, and actually Todd kind of confirmed my thinking without a time frame on it. That at some point, there's going to be a decision that has to be made. As far as what benefits we get, I am sure as a small business that there are organizations of small businesses that have banded together to provide insurance programs of all sorts for their employees. I don't see that as any obstacle or any reason to remain in affiliation with UUA. That would be the last thing that would even attract me, because there's so many options out there in the small business realm.
Okay, good to know.
Although
absolutely.
I do think there are members of our congregation who want to continue the UUA relationship, whether it's for the partner church affiliations or for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. You know, there are affiliations that are important to some of our members. So, you know, we should proceed with caution on that.
Absolutely. I
Well-
totally agree, Karen. And I also think,
But
I think it would be-
would we be prohibited from maintaining a relationship with Fels Rocco? I can still give money to the UU service, the Unitarian Service Committee. I can still do a number of things that I feel meet my particular desires or goals. But as far as being affiliated or forced to be affiliated or feel like a need to be affiliated with UUA,
but I think it would be very fascinating to watch and see. I mean, I think Todd continues to be a liberal religious voice. And that's who we are, and that's who we say we are. And then when we don't meet up to some expectation, that's when I think it would be a really interesting conversation, because we are one church of, I don't know, how many churches are there? More than 1,000 in?
Yeah.
Right around, yeah, around 1,000, 1,200, something like that. Yeah.
Right, and we're all supposed to fill out something that says this is how good we were this year or over this.
Well, that was their initial plan. Yeah, I
Right,
think it
so-
fell through. We haven't heard anything about it since 2018. So I maybe they felt it was foolhardy. I think it was. So
Sure. But anyway,
Well, wasn't there I don't know what a resolution or what it was, but the idea or the terminology tokenism, what was that? And it was described as members or ministers talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And if that was the case, I don't know who in the UUA could accuse that minister or congregation of tokenism. So, you know, they're looking forward to, do you remember, where did that come from? Do you remember, Todd?
you know, I can't remember exactly, Candace. I think that was a UUMA change in the UUMA
Oh, okay.
bylaws a few years ago where yeah, because they used to have, ethics where you could really, it was really safe to be a minister and to be in the presence of ministers and to meet with ministers. And they really wanted to move towards this idea of holding ministers accountable by other ministers. So the UUMA chapter meetings have become just like any other woke organization where, like somebody described this conversation of people, getting in an argument over the purity code around using the word large, whether or not that was acceptable or not. That's kind of what UUMA meetings are like now. You've got to be afraid to say anything. And so it wouldn't surprise me if there's a culture of calling ministers just saying you're just doing things, it dismisses the good things you've done by saying that's just tokenism or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have a better record than a lot of ministers when it comes to the social justice, the big social justice things I've helped achieve in my communities, and all that's gone. I mean, even this local social justice community doesn't include me anymore. It's like you get cooties from canceled people. So that's part of the reality I'm in now. But that is the reality that what you've done in the past doesn't matter anymore. You have you're a white straight male, and the intersectionalism says that's the most privileged and oppressive group there is. And I can take one look at you, and my chart says this is who you are. So anything you did was just for show, or doesn't count, or we'll dismiss it, or whatever.
So I just want to ask one other question to Todd. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but from what you've said, Todd, sort of discouraged about what happened at GA this year.
Mhm.
Are you still planning on going ahead with your plans to, to challenge the UUA leadership, or are you going to pull back from that?
So there has been some talk from some of doing a Recruit Todd campaign on their own, where I wouldn't be involved in it, that they would solicit the petitions from churches themselves. So I have to wait to see if that's going to manifest. There's about a year to do it, which is, it would be, to me, it would be a long shot getting the 50 if I were doing it on my own. But they have already said that if I talk about running, even petitioning in advance of the time they announce their candidates, because it would be unfair to their candidates if I was petitioning until they announce their two selections, right? Who've been handpicked. It'd be unfair to them. But they've said that I can't do that now until November 15th, and that those petitions have to be turned in the latest by December 1st. So, and I can't say anything about it before then, or I'll be disqualified. So I don't want to waste my time. I mean, I could say, well, I'm going to go get the 50 congregations, screw you, and then you can tell us, no, he's disqualified because he violated our bylaws, which is, of course, baloney. But I would feel a waste of time. I don't want to just do something for show, I don't want to, there's a lot of work to try to get that kind of support. So I'm not planning at this point on going after the congregations I would need to challenge somebody in 2023, which would at least give me a platform, even if I don't win, which I wouldn't expect I would, it would give me a platform to help raise consciousness. But I'll have to see if this other group is going to, a sort of Unite type group is going to be able to pull this off. But as for me, I just don't feel compelled at this point to try to do that. It would feel like it'd be a waste of my time, Karen.
How would that fit in, that suggestion of a totally outside group without you doing anything at all? How would that fit in? Would they consider that to be inconsistent with their bylaws?
Well, they could very well come out and say that you're campaigning for somebody, even though they're geared towards the bylaws are very clearly geared towards the candidate, not individuals. But, these people will say anything. I mean, very, very clearly, I am not blocked from seeking petitions. I'm not blocked from it. The bylaws do not block me. In fact, that is precedent. But
Well, there are no bylaws now.
there are no bylaws. Maybe I just say, hey, there are no bylaws. They were suspended.
Off with their heads.
You can't enforce them. They've been suspended. Yeah.
True.
That's a pretty good premise, actually, for running.
Yeah,
Maybe I should do that.
right. You should start off your campaign. Given that there are no bylaws, whatever, I am now announcing.
Yeah.
Actually, it seems like an opportunity
Let me
potentially.
think about that.
Yeah.
I can read the amendment that passed and see exactly what it says.
Yeah,
If they've been-
I think that might be a misunderstanding. I don't think the bylaws were suspended. I think the GP, the planning committee was.
The planning committee was suspended.
For 3 years.
They've been
until
given
then.
permission to rewrite the bylaws.
Yeah, right. And we just gave them permission to revise the bylaws, yeah. Well, okay, at any rate, if you are interested in being a delegate next year, let's get you all signed up now. So I don't have to worry about it.
We'll have to think about that, Lynn.
I wonder if it's possible to just ask Steve. I know Steve joined us just for this conversation, if he had any specific comments or questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm still here. It's all really interesting. Hasn't been really a lot of surprises because I saw all this coming down in GA, what was it, 2019, there in Spokane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit more disheartened than I was, but, you know, we're doing some, we're kind of going through this, you know, on the other side of the mountains, and I'm not directly involved, but I mean, I'm trying to learn what I can about it. And it's just, I don't know, it just rips my heart out to see this religion that I waited my whole life to find destroying itself.
Wow.
That's my comment, really.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being here. I don't know if you guys know Steve, but he's formally joined our church as a formal member who is part of 2 congregations, including ours. And it's really good that we really appreciate your support. And I hope we can support you some as well, Steve. I know these are hard times for all of us. We're still trying to figure it all out. And sorry if you're leaving more discouraged than when you got here, but it's,
Well, I mean, let's just say I'm not particularly more encouraged, but there's, you know, we are finding a fair amount of open minds on this side, but we'll see how it goes. And I have kind of wanted to check in with you before this, but I know you're really busy with all the stuff that you're going through and working on.
well, thank
I don't know, maybe
I wrote your number
maybe
down
I'll
now,
have to-
so I'll give you a call and let's talk soon. I've been wanting to catch up with you anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for letting me listen in.
Absolutely.
And you know, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I will say also Dick Burkhardt, who is a member of 2 churches now, also ours and Saltwater, I believe, really represented us quite nicely. He did speak out. He was present, so he was on site, and that was a little bit more clear as to how to get into what line where you wanted to speak. And so he did speak against each one of those resolutions and the amendment. And he did represent UUCS, this congregation. So that was quite lovely. Did a very good job. Okay. We only have 1 minute left, so I won't go too far into this, but board members, we need to know who's going to be doing what in the next coming year, because somebody else will be stepping into plan and run the next meeting. So, well, first of all, for our congregants who are all here watching us try to deliberate what we can and feel like we can and cannot do next year, I'm just going to be very frank with you all and say we're tired. It was a very long year, and we worked very hard, and we met weekly, and that is not sustainable for us as a group of people who are volunteering and wanting to give our best to this church, but also have lives and jobs and families, and a couple of us are caregiving parents. And so we've had a brief email discussion about who can and cannot do what role. And so far we have a secretary, and that's Darrell. And Candace has agreed to continue as our ops team liaison, which is lovely. Betsy and I are discussing perhaps her running the meetings and me doing some of the agenda setting as sort of co-leaders, but we don't have a full slate of officers yet. unless we have somebody else here who wants to step up to the role of president. Dick, or I know that it would be cruel to say, Lilia, she wasn't here, so she's president now. We already did that to Betsy once with treasurer.
I think we better do that. Yeah. No, that would be sneaky and bad.
Yeah, so we have a little bit more discussing to do. We could also set our date for our board retreat. Oh, the other thing we also have talked about is, the board is required to have 10 meetings a year. And it did feel like this year something came up frequently. Something always came up. But we would like to try to do that next year, to do 10 meetings. And if there is something urgent, we are all fully aware that our new updated bylaws now puts some of our policies and procedures outdated, or needing to be updated, or needing to be adjusted according to our new bylaws. But none of those things are so desperately urgent that we are thinking, even if we wanted to, that we would need to do weekly meetings again. So that's where we are right now. Yes, Tom.
Just a suggestion on that subject, as I may have mentioned to you all before, you do have the ability to make executive committee of 3 persons, and it's conceivable that as you look at the policies and procedures, you could maybe just figure a 6-week period with 3 of you working on, the first and second policies to bring back to the board. And then it could be 3 other people for the third and the fourth policies and procedures. Otherwise, I see a way that you could divide that up so that it wouldn't involve a committee of a whole, as you did with the bylaws. So I think you've got something to think about and some flexibility there.
Great. Great. Okay. Well, does anybody have any travel dates or any ideas or thoughts about perhaps the board retreat?
September is a good month for me, toward the middle to end of September.
Oh, okay.
August, I'm not going to reliably be around.
Probably the same for me, Lynn. August isn't a good month.
Yeah. I'm okay so far, except for the last weekend in July. I am not available.
Yeah, August doesn't work as well for me. And then at the end of October, I'm also going to be out of town.
I think it'd be great if we could do it before October again.
Right.
That seemed a little bit late last year. It felt like we we certainly had our momentum going in other ways, but maybe since we're going to be doing something a little bit hopefully different, or a little bit more chill this year.
Chill.
Okay, well, I will send out something via email, but we're going to need to have somebody start thinking about planning our next meeting, which would be, well, maybe we want to bring Lilia on.
Doesn't Lilia need to, the board retreat is typically done before the board year begins.
Yeah, it is.
We just kind of thumped out August, which makes that difficult, but we don't really need to bring Lilia in, or she doesn't the board retreat is probably when she should come in and kind of get initiated, I suppose, with us.
Mhm.
We don't really need to try to bring her in July. Do we even need a meeting in July? I guess is what I'm getting to, Lynn. If we're only going for 10 a year, have we skipped one yet?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
No,
So we
We could skip July and August.
we get a pass 2 months of the year per the bylaws. What did you say, Candace? The last week in August? I'm sorry, in July?
it was the last week in July. I'm not available, but I guess this would be on a Saturday, right? So I'd be available any other Saturday in July.
When are you back, Betsy?
I'm back actually I'm in Alabama right now. I'm back at the end of this week, but then I have to go to Idaho for a couple of weeks to do some things there. So, but that's why I was thinking, is there a time we could get our retreat done in the summer? Maybe not, I don't know, squeeze it in somewhere in between everybody's vacations in July and August. We're talking a couple of hours on a Saturday morning. What'd we do? I didn't even make the one in October, so that we did last year. 4 hours.
Well, July, I could potentially, I mean, if other people have potential Saturday dates available in July, that could work for me.
Well, there's 4 Saturdays in July.
Okay, so I'm out the last Saturday.
Or
and the
5.
First
right?
Saturday.
Or 5, yeah.
I could do the 9th, the 16th. Maybe the 23rd.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can do all those.
I'll have to be the stickler. I cannot do any of those in July. I've got a Mary Monroe's memorial service is on the 9th. And then Peggy's brother and our sister and brother-in-law, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law will be here for that week from the 16th through the 23rd.
Okay.
So the 30th, I'm okay.
But the 30th, you're okay, Todd?
30th, I'm okay, yeah.
But Dick, you're not around?
Yeah, I'm out of town on the 30th.
Okay. I remember doing this last year then.
Yeah.
No, I do wonder if, if you were to take a meeting off in July
Mhm.
and then have another formal meeting in August and then schedule the retreat in September. That would really give you just one meeting between now and your board retreat as a new board.
It's a decent idea. September is probably better for the retreat. Most people are done with vacations a little bit.
Any other thoughts on co-leadership-ishness?
Thoughts from people besides me, Lynn?
Well, anyone.
I think it's a good idea. The problem with being board president, I should say, there's probably many problems or many ways too, but the real problem with it is there are some folks in the congregation who think that, that's the person you go to when you're upset about anything. And so it's a lot of work because the board president has to keep dealing with all of these attempts to make a big issue out of something, or sometimes success in making a big issue out of something. If you really defined, committed to saying, we're going to have co-chairs at this point, That we're going to divide the responsibilities of one who is presiding over the board meeting, which is what a president does. They preside over the board meetings, and somebody else helping with the agenda. And then being able to tell congregants, you know, if you have issues, concerns, we need you to present those to the board as a whole, not to individuals. And really put that into practice so that one or two people aren't feeling like they're in a position where they have to constantly play church politics with a couple of individuals who
Mhm.
upset about something. I mean, I think co-chairing would be doable that way, and it would be reasonable. And it would protect you. That's my biggest, I think that one of the biggest problems, and Lynn or Dick, Betsy, who've been board presidents may feel differently about that, but I think that's the biggest thing to me is you're almost always on when you're president. It's hard to have a stress-free year.
It does seem that it is difficult, Todd, in my experience. There's what the job description is, and then there's what it really, and Lynn and I've chatted about this, and Lynn knows it, and Dick knows it, what it really turns out to be.
Right.
Which is essentially the head of the organization, aside from you, Todd, and some person to whom everyone will appeal, or just, I don't know, repository for issues or church politics, as you say, and just sort of more stuff than you need. Although, I don't know, I mean, it's good to set boundaries or try to change that. And that's what Lynn is trying to innovate around, to try to change that perception, I suppose. And
Well, I'm also trying to very much, and I have been trying to get people to understand. I mean, we want people to want to be on this board or to be on any team, right? But particularly on the board, and if it's overwhelming, so much so that, you know, really good people have had to leave. John Bagby was an excellent board member, and it just became too much.
Yeah.
And it can't be, it's not sustainable for any church, I don't think. And so I think if we could show people that it doesn't have to be that way. And last year was totally different because we were so focused on our bylaws. So I don't really know what it feels like to be president during a more a usual year, if there could be such a thing. But you know, I'm happy to set agendas. I'm happy to help. And if we just have, I mean, I think we have to have a president. We have to have somebody who can sign things as the president, just like I have to do this thing right now. So we don't call ourselves chairs or co-chairs, or I tried to be chancellor, but I didn't get to change that. Anyway.
It almost seems like we could sort of redefine the role in that the president and the vice president kind of work as co-chairs, you know, basically split up the responsibilities of president, unless I'm really unaware of what the vice president does.
Well, the vice president so far steps in when the president's not able to do stuff.
So that is even more to say that a sort of a co-chair position with one in name as president and one as vice president, but essentially finding a way to share those duties might be workable.
yeah, I think that's exactly what Lynn's suggesting, Catherine. I think that's a good idea.
Because I could be a co-chair with presiding over meetings, except if something comes up. And again, I am concerned about what's happening with my mom. And so there might be some times where I wouldn't be available, and my my co-chairperson could handle the presiding over any meetings that I might not be able to be there. But right now, I can't know for sure, but right now it looks like I may be able to be more reliably there for this year than I thought I would be able to be this year.
Glad your mom's okay.
She's doing pretty well, but I have concerns.
Mhm.
Well, let's wrap up this conversation so Miss Dorothy can sign off. Yes, sorry, Dorothy. And I guess I'll send around another email, and we'll
Yeah.
everybody go to sleep on it
Okay.
and think
Okay.
about
Yeah.
what you might
Yeah.
be able to do. We've got a secretary. I did say in my previous email that I'd be happy to serve as treasurer, although Betsy wouldn't mind continuing in that role also. And she was great at it when she picked that up.
So I
So
don't know about that, but I figured out how to do the report, at least sort of. So I have a starting point, so that's good.
Okay.
For next year.
well, let's all go sleep on it.
Suggest you think about boundaries. Think
What's
about,
that, Todd?
think about boundaries that you need.
Right, right.
Wow.
Individuals and as a board, what boundaries do you need so that you can feel good about doing this work?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we'll sleep on.
Okay,
Everybody sleep on it.
yep,
Okay,
okay,
this
Yeah.
meeting is adjourned.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
all right,
nice.
Good night, everyone.
okay,
Good night.
good night.
Right?